looking for the ultimate source of inspiration, knowledge, and entertainment? Look no further. Network Kingdom is a unique platform that brings together experts from various industries. Through networking and collaboration, we create inspiring conversations that educate, entertain, and motivate our listeners. Whether you're a business professional, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to grow their knowledge base.
Hello, everyone. I'm back here again. Network Kingdom Conversations with Omo. And today, my conversation is with the great Bob Burg of the Go Giver series. I mean, if you haven't read one, then I don't know what you've been doing. It's so nice to have you here today, Bob.
Oh, it's so lovely to be with you. Thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you. I didn't want to read your bio. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Well, I began in broadcasting and then got into sales and really started to learn and study sales. And I found I very much enjoyed it. A lot of what I loved was the personal development aspect, where you really had to build yourself from the inside, right? Reading books and listening to audios and watching videos and doing all those things really filled my mind with new information that I just had not had. And I realized that success is really, it starts on the inside. It's an inside job. Now it manifests itself outwardly, certainly, but it begins in here and in here. And from there, after doing well in sales, I was sales manager of another company, eventually teaching others how to do what was working for me. And from there, I started speaking and writing books and so forth.
Awesome. So, yeah, I know about the Go Giver Leader. I think I've read the Go Giver Leader, the Go Giver Influencer,
Thank you.
and the Go Giver, the first one, the one that is read. I think a little story, something
Yep.
like that.
The Go Giver is the title, and then a little story about a powerful
Yes,
idea.
yes. I for some reason, and up until I started speaking with you a few weeks ago, and I started searching, and I was wondering why I never read the Go Giver Sell More, and why I never read The Art of Persuasion, and it really bothered me because I'm not a good salesperson, and I realized that I actually didn't read it because I had made up my mind that I wasn't a good salesperson. So I smiled when you said it actually starts from inside, because that's confirming what I thought. I had actually convinced myself from the inside that I wasn't a good salesperson. And up until now, I always felt that to sell more, I had to look for a better person to do the sales, because I'm never satisfied with how any other person would sell me, because really in my line of business, I would be the best person to sell myself.
Sure.
So it's funny that you said that. But before we go to the sell more, sorry about that. Before we go to the sell more and all that, let me just hear what you have to say.
Well, I mean, I think when you talk about not being a good salesperson, we have to ask ourselves, how are we defining sales, right? Because I know here in the US, most people have a very negative view of sales. Many misperceptions and misconceptions. People think of selling as trying to convince people to buy things that they don't want or need. Well, that's not selling. That's called being a thief or a con artist, right? Selling, by definition, selling is simply discovering what the other person does want, does need, does desire, and helping them to get it. Now, when we look at selling that way, when we look at selling as all about giving time, giving attention, giving counsel, giving education, giving empathy, giving value to others, Now we can feel very good about sales. I have a feeling you're a wonderful salesperson. You just probably have never defined sales in that way.
You reckon, but how do you sell to someone who, so you see someone who say, let's say I want to sell empathy. Maybe that's the value I'm bringing to the table. And the person I want to sell it to that I believe needs it doesn't even realize they do.
Well, we have to ask people questions so that they actually come up with the answer themselves. Because if we say to someone, you need this, well, people being as they are, human nature resists being told we have to have something, or right, we don't want to be convinced, right? So when we ask people questions in a gentle, tactful way to help them bring out the answer themselves, that's really excuse me, that's really when it happens. There's also, you can have a product or service that you might know someone needs, but maybe they don't want it. They may need it, but they don't want it. And if they don't want it, they're going to convince themselves that they don't need it, right? Because, well, if they don't want it, they don't want it. So the best thing to do is to find a market of people who, sure, they need what you offer, but they also want what you offer, or at least they're open to what you offer, as opposed to trying to get people to change. Instead, look for the people who already are more apt to be agreeable and want what you offer.
So with the Go Giver series, is that what you call it? Because I call it the Go Giver series.
Yeah, that's what we call it.
Is there a principle behind it? Because a few that I've read kind of have a common pattern.
Well, yeah. So my co-author, John David Mann, who is really the lead writer, he's such a wonderful writer, and what he's came up with was the statement that we gave to Pindar in the first story, and that is, the more you give, the more you have. And what does that mean? It means that when you give value to others, when you give help to others, when you give counsel to others, when you give others your time by listening to them, when you introduce people to one another, when you find ways to give to others, not only do you not lose any of that yourself, but you actually gain in the esteem of other people, and people feel good about you. People begin to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be part of your life. They want to be part of your business if that's appropriate, but they definitely want to tell others all about you. So, we focus on the giving aspect, giving being defined as focusing on creating value for others.
So, my BNI has made me, I was going to say I'd never thought of it like that, but prior to BNI, I'd never thought of it like that. I had, in my conversation with Dr. Ivan Meister, I said the same thing, that I'd always just thought that networking was about asking.
Right.
So it was a huge aha moment when I joined BNI, and they said, no, it was about giving. So, and I think that was when I read my first Go Giver.
Well, Dr. Meisner, of course, he coined a term, one of the most famous business terms that we've had over the last 30 years, and that is giver's gain.
Yes.
And that was Dr. Meisner's, verbiage. And he's so correct, because when you give from a true heart of wanting to help others, then great things come back to you, not through magic, but again, just based on human nature. People feel good about you. People want to engage with you, and BNI is certainly a fantastic, wonderful group that has benefited so many people in so many countries throughout the world.
Absolutely. So, in all of your books, what I found, and I didn't realize that until I started digging, that 90% of your books always talked about giving in one way or the other in different forms, but the bottom line was always giving of yourself, giving of your, giving. And that was when it struck me that you had a book titled It's Not About You. I haven't read it.
No,
but
you
the
don't. You don't have to read it because you've already read it. The Go Giver Leader, which you've read,
Yes.
that was originally titled "It's Not About You." We changed the title to the Go Giver Leader.
Oh, really?
Do not buy that book.
That makes sense, actually, because the Go Giver Leader, it's not about you, really.
Right. It's about those you're leading. It's about those.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So don't buy that book. You've already got it.
Awesome. So, there's a question I like to ask when I meet leaders like you who have done exceptionally well, and I call them my mentors in different ways. How did you put your first book together? How did you, from thinking to action to publishing to how did you just piece it together?
Well, my first book, it was really just a matter of, I put down on paper what it was I was speaking about, because I was speaking before I was an author, and I had written up my program. Yeah. So when I came up with the title, which was Endless Referrals, that was my first book, written back published in the 90s. And Endless Referrals was the title. Networker Everyday Contacts into Sales was the subtitle. And I simply, decided what the chapters would be based on the different aspects of my talk when I would present on it. And then I wrote not only what I spoke about, but I sort of researched and made it more complete, right? Went deeper into it. And that's really how I did it. As far as finding a publisher, which can be very difficult at first, I got lucky because somebody who I met at a National Speakers Association meeting just happened to have had a book published, and he introduced me to his agent. And he was nice enough to do that. And the agent liked the book, and then he shopped it around to the publishers and found a publisher for it. So that was more luck than skill on my part.
But you put out a good book, so you have to take the credit, really. Oh wow, that's interesting. So now to something that, now I'm being selfish because I'm the one who wants to know. The Art of Persuasion. I have to go, and I'm getting that book tomorrow. I'm certainly going to get it tomorrow. The Art of Persuasion. And the reason being, if I believe, and I would like for you to speak into that, if you want to be a good salesman, you certainly have to learn. I'm sorry about that. You certainly have to learn the art of persuasion. And going by what you said, it's not just about selling. It's about knowing what the person needs and actually giving value. And just like I had said, some people don't know that they need it. Some others know they need it, but they want to put it off.
Right.
So I want to believe that the art of persuasion comes in here.
Sure. Well, it's always all about finding out what the other person wants. Now, Dale Carnegie, in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which was written back in 36 or 37.
Is that old? I didn't realize.
But a great book. And what I believe was his underlying premise in that book was where he said, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. Okay? So if you're going to persuade, and persuasion is nothing more than helping someone to make a decision that's in their best interest. Okay? Now that's the opposite of manipulation, which is getting someone to make a decision that's just.
There's a thin line actually between persuasion and manipulation.
It depends, right? It depends on the intent, because a manipulator A manipulator is not concerned with whether you do well or not. A manipulator just wants what they want, and they may not be trying to necessarily hurt you, but if that's what it takes for them to get their way and get what they want, that's what they'll do. Okay, and they'll play upon your feelings of any kind of weakness you feel about yourself. So manipulation's a very bad thing. Persuasion is being concerned about how it benefits the other person. Okay. So for a persuader, the other person has got to also win. It's got to be a win-win. Okay. And the other person has to feel good about it. And so, yeah, so we always need to make sure that we're persuading, never manipulating. And at the same time, we want to make sure we're not allowing others to manipulate us, right? They can try to persuade us. They can try to persuade us. That's fine. But we have to always make sure we don't allow ourselves to be manipulated by someone else.
How do I stop someone from manipulating me?
Well, realize that a manipulator is typically going to tap in to those feelings that you have of any kind of what I call weakness. Okay. So let's say that they have been able to determine, and manipulators often have a way of really being able to read people, and they see that you, and I'm not saying this is true, but let's say they find out that you really care about what other people think. Let's say status. They know that, so that if they can make you feel that by not doing this thing you want to do, that you won't have the status of somebody else, they'll play on to that, right? Yeah. So, or let's say, let's see, they know you're very much a family-oriented person, and they'll try to manipulate you by implying that if you don't do this thing, it's going to hurt your family, right? Okay. So here's how you kind of get the sense of manipulation. If you have feelings while they are talking to you and trying to persuade you, actually, they're not trying to persuade you, they're trying to manipulate you. But when you have these feelings, ask yourself why. Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Why are these feelings come up? Where, what is it that this person's wanting me to do that I don't necessarily want to do, but they're kind of, you know what I'm saying? Just get with that. Be in the present. Ask yourself these questions. And if you feel, always realize you have freedom of choice. You do not have to agree to anything. Now, you can just be nice about it and say, I appreciate your thought. This is not something that I choose to do, but thank you for asking. And that's fine. You don't have to be mean or yell or anything else. You can just always keep your emotions, under control, and just respectfully, just say, thank you. While I appreciate your offer, it's not something I choose to pursue. And that's it. And just don't allow yourself to be manipulated.
Yeah. I say to people that no is a complete sentence. And I think that I read Dr. Ivan Meisner's book, Who's in Your Room, during the lockdown.
Wonderful book.
Wonderful. I told him that as well. Wonderful book. And there was somewhere he repeated, no is a complete sentence. And ever since I became very conscious of that, I actually feel a lot of relief. And when I'm able to say no nicely, and with all good intentions, because you find that you end up doing some of these things you really don't want to do, and then you're really bogged down and you're not particularly happy either.
There's no question that we should say no when we want to say no. Now, I'm not sure it's a complete sentence, though, because I probably just wouldn't say to somebody, no.
No. Yeah.
But I'd probably say, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I choose to do, please know how grateful I am to be asked, or something like that. And because we always want to do it with kindness. Now, with someone who's trying to manipulate us, you don't have to be
certainly. But in the past, what I would do is, oh no, I don't want Bob to get upset.
Right. Oh no.
Anyway.
Exactly. It's very, very important to say no when you need to say no.
Yeah.
And if you're, and if
nicely, yes.
Always nicely, tactfully, diplomatically. but we need to be able to not only respect the other person, but we need to respect our own boundaries.
Absolutely. 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 Okay, so now talking of boundaries and the art of persuasion,
Mhm.
how do I how do I persuade someone or a potential client without um putting the person's boundaries in place and my own boundaries, like putting that into consideration?
Sure.
How am I able to persuade the person without getting out of line?
So first, you want to know the questions in advance that you're going to ask someone. So depending on what any person sells, there's usually a target market, a certain type of demographic, psychographic, what have you, a certain type of person who is more likely to benefit from their product or service. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you know basically what type of person this is, you know that there are certain ways in which they're going to benefit from your product or service. Yet everybody is an individual and has their own reasons for doing things or not doing things. So it's not just a matter of one size fits all, but we've got to be able to. So this is where the discovery aspect of a sales presentation comes into play. This is the most important aspect of a sales presentation, the discovery. This is where our one goal is to discover what this other person needs, wants, or desires. What challenges or problems we're helping them to overcome with this product or service. How our product or service makes their lives better. And so we ask questions that are designed to have this person open up and basically share that information with us. When we ask our questions, we want to ask and then really listen deeply with not just with our ears, but with our eyes, with our posture. We also understand that there's times they may give an answer and we may think we know what they mean, but we're not really sure, because as human beings, we all think from our own set of beliefs and understandings of how the world works. So we always want to tactfully and diplomatically clarify and make sure, just to make sure that I understand this, just so that I know I can serve you best. When you say, so and so, could you go a little deeper and share with me what you, right? And
Yeah.
so only once we know the excuse me, I'm fighting a cold that a lot of us have in the
Yeah.
no.
I know this.
Um, so I'm sorry. Once we really know that we know what they need, want, desire, and so forth, only now can we connect the benefits of our product or service with those needs, wants, and desires.
Yeah.
So that is how we do it. That is how you persuade. Again, persuade is a good thing. It means you're helping someone to see something that's of benefit to them that they may not have seen without your help.
Yeah. 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 Sorry about that. I'm
So
glad you kind of clarified that, because I'd always seen persuading someone, same thing as I'd always seen it, put it in the same category as manipulating someone.
Sure. Right.
So
That's so
I
important to
mean,
clarify.
I'm so glad to learn the difference. So I'm curious, at the time you were writing these books, sales, the typical salesman sold face to face.
Right.
Now 90% is done virtually.
Mhm.
How does it work?
Sure. So let's also realize, though, that many, 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 many years ago, before the internet, there was this other tool of technology that we all used to use called a telephone. Right. And, we weren't in front of the person, and yet we still had to create
Well,
relationships.
actually, that's true. And I remember all those calls. I'm sometimes, depending on the time of the day, you're almost so certain it's a salesman calling.
Right. But, so technology is is what technology has always been. It's a way to help, when used correctly, it's a way to help further the relationship. But it's not a replacement for the
Yeah.
relationship.
No, certainly it's
Right.
not. It's not a replacement. It's not. It's not a replacement. It's not a
Exactly.
replacement. Oh wow, that's. I really have learned a lot. And so, what is the relationship between your book on referrals, Endless Referrals?
The relationship with it is just, it was really written as a way for entrepreneurs and salespeople who, they knew they had a great product or service. They knew it added a lot of value to people, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable or confident going out into their local areas and creating the kinds of relationships where people would want to do business with them directly and refer them to others. So that was sort of my system for how to create those relationships.
Oh wow. Then I have to go. So it's a system. Can you tell us a bit about that system?
Well, a system in itself, when you think about it, the definition of a system, at least my definition of a system, is the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key is predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, and eventually you'll get the desired results of B. That's a system. And so I put together this system of how to meet people, how to engage them in conversation. And of course, it's always asking them questions about themselves.
Yeah.
How to follow up with handwritten notes, or how to connect. Now, I wrote this back in the 1990s, so email wasn't a known thing yet. So, but it's still the same thing when you think about it. Now, I still believe in handwritten notes, but it's also great to connect with them online and through Zoom, like we're doing, and through other ways, emails and all sorts of different ways. So, but again, it's all about creating the whole system is about creating the relationships and developing a type of relationship that I call, well, years ago, and I, of course, John and I wrote about this in law number 3 of the Go-Giver, and I talked about this in Endless Referrals. I've been talking about this for 30 years, and that is that all things being equal or close to equal, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like and trust. And it's all about building those relationships.
That is very important. I mean, I have learned that building relationships really is the key when it comes to referrals and actually increasing your network. It's not just about attending networking events and exchanging business cards and thinking they're just going to call you up. You have to build those relationships because, just like you said, if I know, like, and trust you, instinctively I'll look out for work for you. And and instinctively, everywhere I hear anything that I think you'll benefit from, you'll be the first person I would call.
Exactly. And this is where Dr. Meisner's giver's gain philosophy really comes in, because when you're always looking to give value to others, that's, you're creating those relationships.
So if you were going to say to a non-salesperson like me,
which I'm not going to buy into that. I say,
okay, Bob, I take that as a compliment, and I receive it. I'm going to start manifesting a salesperson side.
As long as you think of it, when you define a salesperson as someone who's discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it. When you define a salesperson as someone who's giving time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and value, why wouldn't you describe yourself as a salesperson? Because that's who you are. That's what you do.
Okay, then. Okay, I claim it. I accept it, and I'm going to manifest it. So that said, I'm a salesman who hasn't realized that she's won. So what are 3 top tips that you would give me to get me going immediately?
Well, I think like anything else, it's determining what you need to do and then just taking the step to do it, right?
So
I mean,
feel the fear and do it anyway.
like Susan Jeffers said, exactly. in her wonderful book.
Okay. And is there any other thing,
I think just focus on how you can add value to others, and just, recognize that if you want to make a lot of money, you can't really have making money as your target. You're right. Your target is serving others.
Yeah.
But when you hit the target of serving others, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But it's important to remember that the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your target,
not the target itself. Oh, that's powerful.
Thank you so much.
Powerful. You've spent quite a lot of time with me this evening.
My pleasure.
And I know that anyone who's listened to this podcast is definitely going to get lots of words of wisdom. Before we say our goodbyes, is there any one special thing that you want to leave our listeners with?
I just wish everybody to do their best and to enjoy life, and to make it a fantastic 2023. We're already a month into it. We've got 11 months left. Let's just keep bringing value to others and receiving joy ourselves.
So much giving of himself as usual. It's been an awesome few minutes with Bob, but I'm not going the way that I came. He's filled me and emptied himself, and I'm so happy he's poured into our lives today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to see the good-looking Bob, subscribe to the YouTube channel and you can see him. Otherwise, you can listen and download the podcast. If you get online, Bob, I know that you have some of those courses I told you that I had just discovered, the sales one, and I'm sure they can find that at bobburg.com.
Burg, B-U-R-G.
Burg.com. So go there. I'm sure that I'll be there and I'll let you know how it all went. So same time next week. Take care, guys. Thanks.
You've been listening to Network Kingdom with Omo Obilor. Remember, if you cannot see where you're going, ask someone who has been there before.